Hello to you, David King.
Morning, G. Another great weekend of footy.
So much material to work with.
It's the season that just keeps on giving, eh?
All right, give us a King's Gambit to get the heart started.
Well, it's been a fascinating weekend to look at what you need just in case, right? So the old just in case, right? So I know you've never been a third wheel, but it's great to have a third wheel. If you're a midfield in our competition at the moment, I think the power of three, when you have a good think about it, is so evident. And it sort of hit me between the eyes watching that game yesterday, Brisbane versus the Swans. So Lachie Neale was not having any influence on the game at all. And then Rayner and McCluggage went in and just said, hey, it's all right, we got this, right? So they had the support there. I watched the Dogs on Saturday night. Didn't have to be Bont. Richards has been unbelievable. Treloar keeps having this top line season, and Libba Libba's just Libba. So they've got two of those other three can be the makeup group, if you like. Sarong's got Brayshaw and Young. Cripps has got Walsh, but who's after that? If you haven't got the third wheel, you got to find it. You're racing the clock now. I look at Warner, Goulden, and Heaney has come off. He's come off as a midfielder big time. So that's one that I'd like to sort of do a deeper dive into. But I did say to you a few weeks ago that midfield minutes for the first time, it's a long year as a prime midfielder for the first time. And I just feel like 2 of the last 3 weeks he's probably been just. He was okay against St Kilda, but when he's not that player, their midfield looks like it's lacking, and it was exposed yesterday at stages. Dangerfield, is Stewart really, or is Holmes really that other midfielder? It's sort of almost manufactured. Nick Dacos doesn't have a wingman at all. We've talked about that. That's why they've run the ground. Butters has got Rosie. Now, Horne-Francis, is Horne-Francis really the man at the moment? Like he's in patches maybe, but it hasn't been since, I reckon, the round 11 game against North Melbourne. That's a while ago now that he hasn't been that absolute must-have in the middle type player. And I know we've talked about him going forward, but as a genuine mid, who is their third wheel? This is why the Hawks are coming hard. Because you've got Dane Newcombe and Warple who are doing it beautifully, and Nash is a strange one. He's a bit of their Libba, if you like. He's a tall Libba that does a bit of everything. So that's why they've come thick and fast. The Gold Coast crew is boarding pass reliant. You got the GWS Giants. Is Tom Green still Tom Green? Like he's their main man. Finn Callaghan, I think he's a midfielder. They're playing him out on the wing. So is he absolutely part of this mix? I know Canelio and Kelly have been banged up and are injured at the moment, but if you haven't got the power of three in there, if you haven't got your third wheel, if you haven't got that guy you can lean on when things aren't going well for your absolute main man, I think you're an also-ran. So this is about volume now. It's about not necessarily plan Bs or next wave. It is prime. Who are your prime three that can get it done? So there's 5 weeks to go, 4 weeks to go. So you got to get yourself moving now. You've really got to find out is Heaney going to gather and go as a midfielder, or do they just have to put him forward without Papley for a little while? So that's where I'm sitting, and it spins off into other discussions like. For the Adelaide Crows, you need to have a look at Hinge in the middle of the ground now and see if he can be a Hayden Young type, because they make such a difference. I mean, they've become a different model with Hayden Young in the middle, Fremantle. There's other players that can be, whilst your year is over, you can still gain. I mean, this is what happened at round 20 last year. Hayden Young went in the middle. Round 20 last year has been a prime part. He's a top 5 player in the comp right now in terms of influence on the scoreboard. So can clubs find someone whilst their year's running aground that can go and do this?
All right, the King's Gambit, the third wheel, the power of three in the midfield at your footy club for the contenders. The big issue is clearly what happened in the twilight on Saturday was incredible to live through. Hawthorn and Collingwood, both stories were huge. Do you have the imagination for Hawthorn? And is that the end for Collingwood? What an event it was.
Yeah, it's just, I'll tell you, Hawthorn are everything Collingwood aren't at the moment. They're playing attractive, free-flowing, aggressive, hard-running footy, and no one's having more fun than the Hawks. We sort of likened them to the LA Lakers of the 80s at the moment. Everyone wants to be there. You want to be part of it. You want to go and watch. They're embracing this, the upstarts. They're embracing the brash kids that could, taking photos, carrying on, mixing with the crowd. You got to be there to be part of it. Even if you're part of the opposition crowd, you want to hate on them. You want to have an opinion on them. It's terrific. It's must-watch TV. And I love it. Watson, Ginnivan, Moore, the mids, Jath, they're all got a little bit of healthy footy arrogance. I love it. We've got to embrace this. I think this is the new way. It's too many people stuck in the past worrying, what would the coach of the 70s have said about that? Don't worry about the coach of the 70s. He's long gone. He's long gone, Jared. So we've got to get involved here and really run with it. And I love how Sam's building this group. They're not crossing the line. They're really not. They're having a great time. And but when the ball's there to be won, hey, don't worry, they're doing that as well. So I love the way they're playing. I think that Meek's influence on their ability to win clearance and particularly score from forward 50 stoppages. We spoke on the weekend. So they've kicked 8 goals, 55 points. And across the last 7 years, that's their best return. That's their 5th best return. A lot of footy in the last 7 years. So it's just that everything that they've put in place is working. I know there's still a couple of players short of being a genuine contender. And maybe they get them in one off season. Maybe it takes a couple. Who knows? But it's so refreshing to see. It's not even really about mechanics. It's more about the attitude and the dare and just the shift. The clubs would kill for this mindset. How do we get this? It was Collingwood last year, wasn't it? How do we have this positivity?
So you could tell from the early minutes of that game who was playing aggressive, exciting footy, and that Collingwood was going to have to absorb an awful lot. And you're sort of looking at it going, they're not going to be able to absorb this for more than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So the first question is, will it last? And then how do you diffuse it? And Collingwood never got anywhere near diffusing it. So it does, for a month now, they've challenged the imagination as to what could be. It's why I prematurely threw them into PFI and caused you all sorts of trouble.
You did, actually.
What does... How far
Hawthorn
does
fans think I hate them because you did this to me. You.
Well, because once it gets isolated...
Yeah, I'm glad you're going away at the end of the week. I'm glad you're on a plane somewhere.
Once it got isolated, it looked like dissing them, but it was just, this is our highest possible measure. So is your imagination broadening for what Hawthorn might be able to do?
Well, I just have scribbled down some games that matter now on the way home, and we did this last year. There's only a handful of games that are really going to shape the course of where you finish in the 8 or if you actually make the 8. They play Carlton in round 22 at the MCG, and that's in my opinion, going to be for all the chips. It's going to tell us whether Carlton are going to finish with a home final set up in terms of top 2. If Carlton win that, they probably finish top 2. But if they lose it, the Hawks are alive. It puts Carlton in a bit of a spiral, and the Hawks you can actually genuinely believe in. So they're more than just the best side out of the 8 type discussion. They're more than that, aren't they?
They are.
And it's happened quickly. I still, everyone says, they come at me when I say this, but if we are talking about their bona fides, what they're actually doing, better than the comp. They've still got so much growth left in this group. It is still clearance dominant. The rest of their game, it does look amazing and it is aggressive offensively, but there's still a lot of work to do defensively. That's not being negative. That's just if we're talking about where can they go, and this is why they're in for Josh Battle. I mean, a player like that. We're going to talk about Rory Lobb later going to centre half back. If you can find a centre half back that can do the job and change your ability to hold up when things you're swimming against the tide. That selection of Battle, if they can get Josh Battle there, it'll have a huge impact on next year, Jared. It's exciting, isn't it?
Yep.
They've been down for so long, the Hawks, about 8 minutes. Feel sorry for them.
There is a little bit of that sentiment coming through. You'll be shocked to know. Last rights for Collingwood.
Yeah, it all looks too hard. And showed some vision last night of last year, their ability to organise a wave run and then drop in and out of the same wave. So if it doesn't quite work, first handball doesn't quite hit the target, then they sort of spin around and then they correct again and go again. The words of Craig McRae, I think you've got to. It's one thing to hear people, and then it's another thing to listen. He said the other day, and I wrote it down. He said, "We've got people." Or he didn't say we've got. He said, "There's a big difference between being fit to play and fit to perform." I reckon they got a lot of players that are fit to play, but I don't know if they're fit to perform. I don't know if To Go is fit to perform and rip a game to shreds. I really don't, and I just feel like they've lost that edge. They've lost that preparedness to dare and run and go. It's a decision. It's should I go? Should I not? Too late. It's over. You make the call to go. Everything's instant in footy, or you're left behind. So I think they've lost that. Now, can they get that back next year? Probably, but I think this year's a tough task. And I just wonder whether. I looked at John Longmire. We talked about this 4 or 5 years ago. He said, "Look, we could probably limp into 7th and 8th, but we're really not doing anything. Let's put the guys out that need an operation. Let's reset. Let's set everything for the next season. Have a quality pre-season and go." I think that's almost the discussion at Collingwood now. If To Go is not right, what's the point? If there's surgery required for a few, get it done. That's what I'd be looking at and setting for next year, because they've got an ageing list. So they need every post to be a winner heading into next year if they are to have one more tilt with this group.
And the Ginnivan dynamic in the game. So the pantomime was so rich, and that's when footy fandom is at its best. There was a winter's afternoon 2 seasons back where Hawthorn supporters were baying for his head and Collingwood supporters were defending him to the death, and those same supporters were in the stands together on the opposite side of it. So there's that, but there's also just his pure football influence. So Collingwood paid him no heed. He tore them to shreds.
Paid him no heed in game?
In game.
Oh, yeah. Which can happen, can't it? I mean, he's a quality player. We've always talked about his ability to play.
Their only interest was the physical side of things with him and grinding old funny axes, not worrying about, my God, he's had it 30-plus times.
But there's some players you just want to whack, Jared. And when you play against them, you just want to rip them to bits. And he is that guy, isn't he? Small forwards, they're a different breed, Jared. They are. Look, he's at Hawthorn because he put at risk grand final day for Collingwood. And now I think you've got to allow Craig McRae and the Collingwood Footy Club to make that call. It's a big gamble to actually throw game day grand final morning into chaos. That's not many players survive that. I don't care how young or how talented you are. You put your head on the block. And it's going to work out. I think it's going to work out really well for Jack Ginnivan. Maybe not so well for the Pies, but you know what? They got their flag. I keep saying it. They're bloody hard to win. If you get one last year, how long would you be prepared to live in the muck? Middle of the ladder.
I think they're exhausting to win these days as well.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Even
the coach looks tired, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It looks like it's all coming and getting to him now. It's all sort of on top of his shoulders. Yeah. So they got a challenge. It just to me looks like this is a year they had to have. It's been an awful one with injury, and I keep saying it. I don't know whether we see the depth of injury. Just because the Magnets are on the board doesn't mean that they are the players we know.
So let's do the Lions first as the best bits.
Oh, it was in a lot of ways it was a game they had to win. At home, you got Sydney without McInerney and Rowbottom, and they're two critical parts to their weaponry. And then the injuries in game, obviously, Rampy goes down. Even though Hayward was a very good late, he was off for a bit, impacted with that ankle injury, and then Papley went down. So watching the game, I thought they just have to find a way to win this, Brisbane, and it was a cracking game. And full credit to the Swans for putting up that sort of performance whilst they were impacted. But they've just got players. They've got players that when they step up, they shift the whole course of the game. Like that Cam Rayner game was just extraordinary. It's probably the best game he's played for Brisbane. I still think we judge Joe Danaher extremely hard. Like his influence on footy for Brisbane's been profound, really. I don't know where he sits. If you had to rank the top 5 key forwards over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, where would he sit? It's probably a deeper dive than just throwing it out there this morning, but he'd be right up there, I reckon. And he's a player we gloss over pretty quickly. We talk about his bad stuff a lot. Oh, he's doing this, he's doing that. But geez, he does some things that just create goals. He'll have a shot from anywhere. We know that. I work with Anthony Patsillis, the producer of First Crack, and he made a comment yesterday. He said, Joe's 50-50 from anywhere. He can be top of the goal square and still be 50-50 to kick it, 50-50 to miss. He could be 70 from goal, and he's the same. He's always 50-50. And it was a great call because then you watch the game, and it's exactly how it lived out. But they were terrific. You know, they found a gear when they had to. In the end, their midfield, without any influence really from Lachie Neale, got it done. So as we said before, I think that's extremely pleasing. Are they absolutely bulletproof at the moment? Probably not. I still think they've got some problems down back. You know, Payne's a big out at the moment. When he comes back, maybe it looks a bit better. Maybe it looks a bit more sound. They found one in Shadow Brain.
Yeah,
he's a
Shadow Brain.
Yeah.
Didn't he make a name for himself in 5 minutes?
He was good, wasn't he?
Yeah.
2 big intercept marks, and then back into the middle, into the corridor, which was really aggressive. But when you have to have it, it's going to keep coming back to when you absolutely have to have it, and it can be a centre bounce clearance, it can be a moment. When they had to have it in that last 2.5 minutes, Zorko leaves Goulden to come forward and defend an intercept mark, which was outstanding because they were through, and that was a stroll-in goal if he doesn't mark that ball, and it nearly slipped out of his clutches. And then Lachie Neale almost gets outsmarted by Sydney. They tackled him and they released the tackle to put it back into if he's done now, it's dropping the ball. So they released the tackle, the old Oz kick style tackle, and then back in to tackle him again. He was good enough to get it away. And then Harris Andrews risks it all. He leaves his man centre. He's in the centre of the ground, absolute middle of the ground, and Nick Blakey has just charged forward. He's rolled the dice. He knows they need to score to win, and he's out. And Harris releases and puts his body on the line. He just throws himself at the contest. And it was unreal to see. And I thought, what the penny has dropped here. And all while this is going on, Joe Danaher's taking himself from full forward to full back to be the guy behind the ball. And I thought, this is what it looks like. And I've never seen Brisbane do this. It's always been a discussion for us, them late in close games. And we always talk about when the team loses a close game, we start with the loser, right? What they get wrong, what should they have done. This was everything done perfectly, but to a level where the leadership group just said, nah, it has to be. It has to be this way. And so I take my hat off to them because there'll be a close final. There'll be another one of these at some point in the back half of the year or the back third of the year. And it may be a prelim. It may be a grand final as we saw last year. They got this wrong a couple of times in the granny and it cost them goals in a 4-point result. So no doubt it's been a work in progress this year and great to see it in full effect.
So I remember crunch time, second win after the bye, we laid out, okay, so what can you see for them? And it was, can you see them getting into the 8? It was less about that as could you see them playing a meaningful role? It was not about could they win home final rights by finishing second.
No.
And this is the rush that they've come with to give themselves this opportunity. Now, who knows? So the Giants and Carlton did this last year and they didn't run out of petrol tickets. That's not why they lost at the end. How long can you sustain a run for? There's very little margin for error, but because errors have been made around them, they've opened up that conversation of a top 2 finish, which was unfathomable.
Yeah. I still think they've been the best list in the comp for 3 years and haven't won one. So the performance has got to match the resources, and it hasn't. And that's harsh, right? And that's why we have other conversations, you know. But so the challenge is to get one. You've got to get one with this group. We talk about Melbourne, you've won one with this group. You've got to win more than one with this group. Well, Brisbane are going to get one with this group. It's too good not to win a flag with this group. So that's probably the benchmark. So when they have the start of the season that they had, we go, oh, here we go again. And we're all doom and gloom on them because they are stacked. The only player they keep telling me about is Kitty Coleman. Well, you can't be talking about a halfback flanker changing your whole season. You just can't. There's got to be more to your program than that. And I think we're seeing that there is.
There was one incident yesterday. So you hate the tunnelling. And we got the tunnelling yesterday with was Harris Andrews on Nick Blakey, wasn't it? It wasn't recognised in real time. So the base platform is ump's got to recognise that, and then what do you do with it afterwards? It was one a couple of weeks ago that we were looking at with Nick Larkey involved, but this was pretty graphic.
Yeah, strange.
It's just so dangerous, isn't it?
And then there was a tunnelling in a marking contest 2 minutes later. I think it was on Berry, and he hit the deck hard too. So there was two that were missed in a short space of time. It's just a strange action. We don't see a lot of tunnelling, do we?
No, and it sort of stands out when you do see it.
Yeah, it was strange.
And
but,
you want to take it out.
Yeah,
really.
But it was just one of those ones that's missed, I think, in the hurly-burly of it all. But with four umpires, you wonder how they miss some of these things.
So the Swans, gallant, again, they lose by less than a kick, but injury. So this has the potential to be the worst bit as we just wait to see if they're so healthy so early and they made hay. But the risk is you get the injuries at the worst possible time.
Because it's a domino effect. That's what we keep coming back to. The Papley injury has an impact on the Heaney role, has an impact on the Parker role, the Mills role. It just changes. It changes what your first picked midfield should look and your first pick forward line. So this is what we're doing. Everyone says, "Oh, you're going overs too much on the health side of it." But when you get to a prelim or a grand final, you look at the vulnerabilities, and when you're picking your 30th player, not your 24th player, it's a big difference. So forget the names. If you take a top 5 player in your team out, like Papley is, and put in the 30th ranked player, that's a fairly big shift. So I hope he's okay. It looked bad, didn't it? The replay of it was almost like his foot exploded as he was coming in. So hopefully he's okay. Hopefully it's just a couple of weeks, but in a moon boot straight away, I don't hold a lot of confidence, but fingers crossed.
That's right. You want that to come back, as we'll see in round 23. But if it comes back tomorrow that out for the season, you wouldn't be the least bit surprised.
No, and that's
just on the visual.
We keep saying this stage of the year, you start seeing season now. And even get back to McRae, it's not fit to play, it's fit to perform. He may be out there. He may miss 6 weeks and then be out there, but is he out there at the levels where he can shift the game?
All right. The pressure index. So I've decided you've got to win your way out of the pressure index.
To win your way out.
Yep. So Essendon landed in the pressure index last week, and they didn't win their way out. So call it resultist, but Essendon are in the pressure index. Where did you end up with Essendon?
Oh, in the end, and people can disagree with it. We had a great chat with
Great
Hodgie.
chat.
And there's no animosity. We leave there. We're still talking on the way. Everyone thinks, you can't talk to each other.
No.
It's just a healthy footy debate. And my view is that if your leaders behind the ball are not instructing and commanding and demanding of role, of position, of performance, and are isolated as 6 individuals, not the collective, not a group of 6 or a group of 12, talking to the midfielders as well, then you have breakdowns like this, and they're always at the wrong time. They're always when you need it to be absolutely 100% spot on. So in the end, the communication behind the ball allows Ben Keys to win a clearance unopposed. It allows Rochelle to push McGrath into the traffic and snap the goal. Those two luxuries are not what good teams allow. They get the job done because they've got the right pieces in the right spots. Kelly didn't know what he was doing. Was he going into traffic? Was he holding off? And in the end got caught in no man's land. He was neither one-on-one with Keys nor behind the ball, nor releasing Langford to be the loose behind the ball. So that confusion as a 29-year-old player has an impact. Langford's ability to not have the conversation with those around, say, hey, I'm the loose, who do we need to pull back? They could have pulled Harrison Jones back as the wingman. He could have done the job at any of those forwards. So they just didn't see the big picture. Now, of course they're learning experiences. Of course they are. But those groups, the group I'm talking about, are all between 26 and 30 years of age. There's no point learning this sort of scenario when you're 28, 29, 30, because by the time you've learnt it, you're out of the system. These are the learnings you have at clubs like the Kangaroos or the Adelaide Crows or a young West Coast Eagles outfit that'll be there evident the next couple of years. So that's when you do your learning, because when you get to this point, they couldn't miss the finals, could they?
So this is their problem. They spent 9 weeks in the top 4, and now they're 8th and clinging on. That's the nature of this season.
So what would we say if they missed the 8? Would you say is it what does it do to the view of their season?
It would be a failed season if they missed the 8. Not a wasted season, but a failed season. Is their time to start to graduate is now, and especially with the platform they laid down. So if we left just the end of the game and went to its totality, that's the sort of game you just have to walk out and win. And the way that they started it, so there's teams on paper and then there's the teams when they warm up in front of you, and sometimes you look at it and go, oh, okay, Essendon should be winning this by a big margin with what Adelaide have got missing and the inexperience here, and here. Essendon have got most of what they want, and then they kick the first 3, and okay, they're going to win this by 50, 60 points. And then they're conceding 8 consecutive goals. There was regression in that for me on Friday night. And even if they'd saved it at the end, once they were 15 points up, they should have won by 21, not lost. But I would have left thinking, nah, that's not the Essendon that they're aspiring to be. That's shootout footy, which we've seen too much of. Couldn't hold momentum. So the flaws for me were much bigger. The flaws were there at the end, no question.
Yeah.
The flaws during the game, that's the first time I've been shaky and thought, oh, right, maybe they're not. I never had them pegged as a premiership contender, but I thought this was the year that they would win that final and break that, and then they could get on with it next year. They're in huge jeopardy of achieving that marker now.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they got critical games. Again, looking at the fixture, they got Fremantle at the MCG in round 21. They got Sydney at Marvel in round 23, and they got Brisbane at the Gabba round 24. Tough games. So they're probably, they're up against it to make it. Now, to me, it doesn't matter whether they make it or not in terms of their growth and where they're going. Like the gap between finishing 6th and 10th to me for next year is not a real issue. They're the same team. But to see these mistakes still being made is an issue for me, because you've got to be in that situation again to find out whether you've learnt that or not. So that there's a lag to that. We're just talking about Brisbane now, getting this behind the ball stuff absolutely bulletproof and spot on, and they've been at the pointy end for 5 years. So they'd be disappointed, and so they should be, because they're I think they were 5th for experience on the weekend, so they're better than this. And I think the question at the post-match press conference was spot on.
Yep.
Should you be better than this? It's a great question. We've been complaining about press conferences for weeks, how they haven't had any spice, they haven't had any meaningful football discussion. That was a ripping question from Wooey, and he stood his ground, and it was a good chat, I thought.
And then he got the right response.
Yeah, and Brad was, in the end, he got there. I know you played the few good men.
Goddamn right I did.
Which was funny on Saturday, but they've got to be better than that. They've got better talent than what they've put out there on the weekend.
The Bulldogs keep having the win that makes you think they've got a big role to play in this season. And I'd flagged it beforehand with you, Kingy. If they won down the highway, we're going to PFI them, no matter where they sat on the ladder. Preliminary final integrity over the Bulldogs. I feel like maybe we've just been stubborn. But we've held our cards on the Bulldogs the whole way through, waiting for this. And this is why I think, quite rightly, their bar is we should be playing finals with what we've got. And it's all been, I think he's coached really well from where they got themselves. And they're not the same setup that they were. They have a role in this season, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I think they've got the equal top 6 players to any of the contenders. But I do think their bottom 6 is still extremely vulnerable. So I'm not walking away from that. And the fact they've been asked to do less right now than what they were asked to do earlier in the year is how it should be. So it looks better now because you're asking less of those guys. So and that's a lot of this stuff's happened by most of the correction in your football club or the innovation at your football club happens by mistake. So Libba goes down, they put Ed Richards in the middle, bang. Hang on, we can't put him to half back now. He's become one of our best midfielders. We can't move him. So get McRae out to there and do this, do that. And all of a sudden, now Libba's back. Okay, now we've got him, and him. We've got too many tall forwards. I'm not moving Norton. I have to move someone. let's just try Rory Lobb. Now, since Rory Lobb's gone back, they've been a different team. They really have. So the first 15 weeks of the year, they lost 1 in 9 one-on-ones down back. Right. Since he's gone back, they're losing 1 in 20. So that's a massive improvement. If you look at their intercept numbers, pre-Rory going down back, they were AFL 14th. Post-Rory going down back, they're AFL 7th. Now, that doesn't sound like a great number, 7th, but you can't win it when you're 14th. You can't win a prelim final when you're AFL 14th, but you can when you're 7th because they don't necessarily rely. They're a territory team. They're a clearance team. They're maximum damage with their midfield. So if you look at what Rory's been able to do, only Ben Mackay has won more intercepts than Rory in terms of all the defenders, and only Zerk Thatcher's taken more intercept marks. So he's been worth a goal a game for them. They've gone from conceding 80 points down to 74. They're the sorts of numbers that have you in the frame. In my mind's eye, I can see the Dogs winning it. I can find a way they can beat Sydney in Sydney, and everyone will be talking about them. Sydney are a bit banged up, got some injuries. Great time to get them. And they're building. They're coming with a rush. We've talked a lot about what they can do. So get excited with what they can do. So look at the numbers that we track. So their accuracy is the only thing really that hurts them at the moment. If they can correct their accuracy, last 6 weeks they're 14th in the competition. So all their numbers are pulled down fractionally. The rewards for what they do are pulled down. But their work without the footy, and I keep saying if you can't defend, whether it be ball movement or defend your back 50, you can't compete. So right now, only Sydney over the last 6 weeks are more difficult to score against once you get possession against them. So that is a massive attribute to have at this stage of the year. It's taken a while to get here. But what Rory Lobb did against Jeremy Cameron, I keep saying it, you get that matchup wrong and it costs you 4 goals. He just, I know it was a wet game and it becomes very much a straight line, easy to read type game when you're a key back or behind the footy. But his marking was one grab and it was contested marking, and he made Jeremy look a bit silly on occasion. So put Jones back into that back line. So you're going to have 2 failed forwards in Jones and Lobb, and Buku Kamas looks more settled with the bigger body around him than just being the centre half back. So I really like what they've done. Their lesser lights had some moments. Like there was a moment where Bramble steamed at the footy 100 miles an hour, one grab, through and gone. I thought that, you know what, that's a young player knowing that he doesn't have a lot of responsibility on him, but he knows what he has to do when it's his moment. For Riley West to play this role and be happy to play it. Cody Waitman is morphing into Toby Green. He really is. The impact that he has on this forward line is profound. So I really can see them going a long way, given what we've seen. They're building. He's a short prep guy. He's the I don't know if he's a horse trainer or what he is, Bevo, in a previous
2-run prep.
I don't know how many horses that do the 2-run preps, Jared, but he's a different coach. He's not everyone's cup of tea, but if you can see the brilliance in amongst the weeds, then I think you get a little window into what the players feel.
They have PFI. They've just got to make sure they're there. I do like this, though. Just create another segment and call it NFI.
Well,
we might do that.
The whole year's been NFI 206. We agree with you, but we're just talking about what we see on the weekend. To go down there and win, it's a big victory.
Huge. And you can either buy them or not, and it's entirely your choice. Tony, the Dogs cannot be trusted. Well, let's see what that looks like.
But we have trusted them though all year. We've stuck
and they keep having they've got a set of these wins, which they're better than half the teams above them. It's just a matter of going and improving them.
And we give everyone else a mulligan or a week off, if you like. So maybe this was theirs. It's a bad time to have it because it rattles you a bit if you're a Geelong fan as to what this season brings or potentially brings. The more I look at it, the more I think that Stewart is their second best player now. So as a midfielder. Like he's been able to win clearance and do what he has to do in there. The way Chris has used him over the last 3 or 4 weeks has been brilliant. They just don't have enough, do they? And this has been the reality for a little while. When you're at the top of the tree like they've been for a decade and won premierships, then this is your lot, really. You've got to make, 7 out of 10 players out of players that are probably logically 5 out of 10 types. So you're manufacturing and manipulating all the time, and some games it just doesn't work. So when Dangerfield's off a fraction, just the 5 clearances, not a lot of score involvements. Stewart, Holmes, Duncan got a bit of footy, but it just didn't look like it had the same spark. And when Rory Lobb was able to do what he did against Jeremy, the wild card option of that wasn't there, and a wet night, pretty predictable. It's all conspired against them.
Yeah. That's more their level, I reckon, where they are. I've been a bit slow to them around Seedings. I copped a lot of heat for that last week. I just don't. They're not in the best 4. And I reckon there's enough this year.
Who gave you heat for that?
I got a lot of heat.
Did you?
Yeah.
You got a heat about your Seedings.
There's a surprise. Wait till you see what I'm going to do with this week's.
Yeah. So when is that error made? Is that an October error? I mean, Grundy out, who in? And I don't know what's on their list, but clearly I do know what's on their list. There's not someone capable to come and fill in for that function. And Fortin was the discussion, but he hasn't really done it across his journey anyway. So this is one of those ones that I think the club have to sit back and as a full list committee say, well, we've set Simon up here a little bit to fail, and they're having to do things in game that were never going to work. That dominance just gives you so much advantage. One step forward, one step aggressive. Young, Sarong, Brayshaw at speed. Good luck. Good luck. I had this discussion with Delius. Can you do things to clamp it? Well, I think they did. I think at half-time, it was something like, I don't know what it was, the actual clearances, I think they won something like the first 16 clearances or something like that. It was ridiculous. Yeah, it was 19-3 at one stage, but it was something like 16-0. Anyway, so what do you do to defend that? Do you defend the actual at the source and gum it up with numbers at the back and make it a really ugly game? Or do you defend the destination give some support to Lever and to May and these guys? I think that's the way they went. Because at half-time, it was something like 2 goals for to 1 goal from clearance. So it wasn't a massive – the trauma wasn't given at the stoppage, really, despite those numbers.
Yep. Fremantle
just ran them into the ground. And we've had this discussion about Fremantle. I heard Bucks backed over me again this morning. My problem with Fremantle is when they play that slow, chip, uncontested mark footy down back, which pauses into oblivion, and it does not win prelims. And I don't care what anyone says. You want to play that way, I'm happy for you to. But don't come, oh, gee, we just ran a ground in a prelim in September. They're not playing that way at the moment. If you watch that game, and I don't know whether everyone watches that game, I don't know. But if you're going to talk about that game, let's apples and apples. They were at speed. Everything was at speed. Nothing was uncontested mark. So I don't know where that review's come from. So Fremantle at speed are a different product to the chip game. They've got the talent. They've got the players to play express. Now, I think over the last couple of months, they've been more prepared to do this than the first couple of months. And they're paying a bit of a price defensively because now they're a little bit gettable with the ball going back the other way. Now, Melbourne weren't good enough to do that to them, but if the numbers say they are taking that risk, I like that. Pearce getting injured again is a concern. Don't know what the fallout is with that forearm, but he looked incredibly sore coming off. I'm not sure what the situation is with Jackson's knee at the moment, so we'll find that out in the next day or so, because they are critical components to this. I mean, we just had the conversation about the Swans.
Yep.
These two, I mean, you don't want to be – these are wild card ruckman / forward, the score creator, big game performer. And Pearce is he's the one you set everything up around down back. But they're a different product now than what they were at round 9.
I feel like this is just a total free swing this week. All care, no responsibility.
Not proud of it this week.
All right, what are you going to do it for?
I'm not proud. Can I just put that at the start? I've over-indexed in potential injury from the round. Okay,
right.
So Fremantle haven't made my 4.
Yep.
Because I'm worried about the 2 big boys. At 4, I got the Dogs. I'm staying strong with the Dogs. But I feel like we've got to ride this journey out. Even if they'll go to Sydney, even if they lose, I'll be tempted to keep them in next week, Jared.
Yep. The Dogs at 4 for me.
Really?
We had a peek at them a few weeks back. We're told no. They're back at 4. 3?
Carlton. I'm just hanging around with Carlton. That wasn't impressive. It really wasn't on the weekend. I want to know who their third midfielder is. There's still a few unanswered questions there. They looked a bit banged up. Danger game this Friday. Worried about Wiedering carrying that mattress around on his thigh. There's a few worries with Carlton.
I've had Hawthorn in the Seedings for weeks.
Hawks.
They're sliding up to 3 for me.
Jeez.
2?
Sydney. That's how I could have had them a lot lower. If I just know the Papley situation, I could have had them a lot lower. But you got to have them there. They're still top of the table.
Brisbane Lions are at 2 for me. Having risen. 1?
I got Brisbane at 1. I think they've come with a rush. They've been very consistent the last few weeks. It's not just Lachie Neale. The leadership's different. What they did in the last 3 minutes last night really won me. It was terrific. So I think right now, if they can get themselves to second and go home final, they could be there again.
I've got Sydney at 1. I'll just keep them there for the time being. I'm sure there's such a good game. So I've got 1v4 in my Seedings coming up on Sunday.